A 62-year-old marine scavenger pulled an old barnacle-covered television set from the rusted remains of a sunken yacht off the coast of Florida. The vessel had been resting there since the 1980s, barely touched by time, and completely forgotten by the public. But what they found inside wasn't just strange, it was disturbing. When the crew managed to power it up using a makeshift generator, the static cleared, and a tape automatically began to play. At first it seemed harmless, champagne, bikinis, laughter, snapshots from another era. But halfway through, the footage shifted. A man could be seen pushing a woman. Hard. Then the screen went black. When the authorities saw who owned the yacht and who was in the video, they immediately shut everything down. How did this tape survive all these years? And why was it never meant to be found? Would you dare to press play? Subscribe if you want more stories like this. His name was Elijah Eli Branson, 62 years old, born and raised in Key Largo, Florida, a man whose life was carved out by salt, wind, and the steady rhythm of the tides. Eli wasn't flashy, didn't talk much, and he certainly didn't seek out trouble. He lived aboard a modest but reliable trawler named the Molly Jane, a tribute to his late wife, and made a humble living salvaging lost cargo, pulling metal scraps from reefs, and occasionally hauling up relics from sunken vessels. Everyone in Monroe County knew Eli. He was the type who fixed his own nets, brewed his own coffee from a steel percolator, and remembered when the shoreline stretched a little farther back before the condos came. In over 4 decades on the sea, he'd seen just about everything. Capsized speedboats, jet engines from downed military aircraft, even a fully intact Jeep resting on the seafloor. But what he found on July 8th changed everything. That morning began just like any other. The sun broke over the horizon with a shimmer that painted the waves gold, and Eli had already downed half a thermos of bitter coffee by the time he throttled out of the marina. With him were 2 crew members, his niece Carly, 28, an aspiring marine biologist with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue, and Miguel Ortiz, a 30-something diver with a solid track record for identifying valuable underwater wrecks. They'd picked up a sonar ping the previous afternoon, an oblong mass about 80 feet down, roughly 6 miles southeast of Tavernier Key. The signature was inconsistent with rock formations and too large for ordinary debris. Eli made a mental note and returned at dawn, hoping to beat the afternoon storms. By 10 a.m. they had eyes on it. A yacht, or what remained of one. Its hull was surprisingly intact, though barnacles blanketed its surface and fish darted through the broken windows. Miguel dove first, swimming tight circles around the wreck, assessing entry points. When he surfaced, his face was unusually tense. "Eli," he said, tugging off his mask. "It's a Sunseeker, late 80s model. No major breaks, which is weird. Looks like it just sank." Eli grunted. "She's deep enough. Probably missed by most of the recreational divers." They made quick work of setting up a retrieval hook and, using the crane fitted to the Molly Jane, began to haul pieces from the sunken vessel. Chairs, a rusted ice bucket, a waterlogged leather purse. Then came the television. It was Miguel who found it, wedged inside what appeared to be the yacht's lounge. A bulky, plastic-encased set, Sony Trinitron, early 80s, complete with dials and a built-in VHS deck. Miguel surfaced with it cradled in both arms, laughing. "Get a load of this! You think this thing ever saw MTV?" Eli chuckled, but as he looked closer, something about it made him pause. It was too clean. Not pristine, but not nearly as degraded as it should have been after decades underwater. No major rust on the inputs, no shattering of the screen. Almost like it had been sheltered. Carly knelt beside it, brushing away kelp with a gloved hand. "Guys, there's a tape still inside." They all froze for a moment. They could have stopped there, marked it down as a curious find, and tossed it in with the day's haul. But Eli was a creature of quiet instincts, and something about the way the TV stared back at him, blank screen, unblinking, made the hairs on the back of his neck rise. By the time they docked later that afternoon, a storm had rolled in. Wind whipped the dock lines and dark clouds coiled low over the mangroves. Rather than unload the full cargo, they wheeled the TV directly into the old boathouse at the end of the pier, a space Eli often used for repairs, storage, and the occasional beer with friends. Carly was the first to speak. "We gotta see what's on it." Miguel eyed the old generator in the corner. "Think she's got enough juice?" Eli just nodded. He pulled the ripcord. The generator coughed once, then roared to life. The TV crackled when they plugged it in, the screen stuttering between lines of static. The sound of the tape's internal mechanism engaged, a low mechanical whir. Then, almost hesitantly, the screen bloomed into color. At first, it was all flickering shapes and washed-out light. A crowd of people on deck. Loud laughter, music. Someone, likely the cameraman, pans across a sunlit scene, a cocktail in someone's hand, a speedboat cutting the water beside the yacht, a woman in white sunglasses flashing a peace sign. Then a male voice off-screen. "Let's toast to the governor." Laughter. Champagne bottles. Dancing. Eli furrowed his brow. "Governor?" Carly leaned forward, squinting. "That guy, in the blue blazer. He looks familiar." As the video continued, names began to surface, names they recognized. One man had held a prominent Florida Senate seat in the late 80s. Another had briefly served as a campaign advisor to a presidential candidate. And the man in the center of it all, often raising his glass, smiling with teeth too white to be real, was William Thorne. William Thorne, real estate mogul, millionaire philanthropist, and frequent name in Miami society pages. The yacht, as it turned out, had been his. "That's his boat," Carly whispered. "The Allegra. That's the one. I read about this. It disappeared in '88. No wreck ever found. They just assumed it sank during that hurricane." Eli didn't speak. He just watched. There was something unsettling about how alive everyone looked. Like the past had punched through the present and was now playing out before them, uncaring and eternal. Then the shift happened. The video, once a blur of decadence and glamour, took a sudden, jarring turn. The image became shaky. Someone, possibly the cameraman, was running. Inside a cabin now, the audio muffled by wood and waves, a scuffle, raised voices, and then it happened. A woman, barely visible at the edge of the frame, was shoved hard against a wall. Her scream was swallowed by the distortion. The man who had pushed her wasn't clearly visible, just the shape of a suit sleeve, a wristwatch glinting in the cabin light. Then, static. The screen flickered. The tape stopped. No one spoke for nearly a minute. Carly broke the silence. "We need to report this." Eli's mouth was dry. "And say what? That we found an old tape on a dead man's yacht?" Miguel shook his head slowly. "No. We say we found evidence. That was real. That was an assault." Eli stared at the TV. It was still on. The screen dark now, humming faintly. In his gut, something turned over. A slow, gnawing discomfort. They didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, Carly made several quiet calls to contacts in the marine archaeology community. One, a woman named Lindsay Holloway, responded with a firm warning. "If you've got something involving Thorne, be careful who you go to." Carly frowned. Why? He was insulated. Teflon. There were rumors for years. Abuse. Exploitation. Ties to powerful people. But nothing stuck. Ever. The case files. Buried. Witnesses. Recanted. Evidence. Gone. Eli exhaled. But this tape? Lindsay didn't miss a beat. If that tape is real, you're holding a landmine. And that's when everything started happening faster than they could control. 2 days later, the Molly Jane was broken into. Nothing taken. Just turned over. Ransacked. A message. That same evening, a white SUV idled at the edge of the marina for over an hour. When Eli approached, it sped off. They'd already made a copy of the tape, but whoever wanted to silence them clearly didn't know that. Viewers, what would you have done in Eli's place? Would you risk everything to bring the truth to light, or walk away before it's too late? Drop a comment below and tell us where in the world you're watching from. Like this video if you think stories like this deserve to be uncovered. And don't forget to subscribe, because the deeper we go into this mystery, the darker it gets. By the end of the week, the tape, or rather its duplicate, had made its way into the hands of a journalist named Damon Wells, a longtime investigative reporter known for stirring trouble in Tallahassee's political circuits. Damon wasn't just any writer with a blog. He'd spent 3 decades chasing corruption, surviving 2 lawsuits, and narrowly dodging an accidental car fire in 1999. If anyone knew how to navigate the minefield they were stepping into, it was him. Eli didn't trust easily, but the fear in Carly's voice when she talked about the break-in and the calm warning from Lindsay Holloway had been enough to push him into a place he hadn't been in years. Active, alert, calculating. He wasn't just a fisherman anymore. He was a witness, maybe a whistleblower. Damon arrived at the marina wearing a Panama hat and sunglasses he didn't take off, even indoors. He sat with Eli in the boathouse for nearly 2 hours, watching the tape, pausing, rewinding, asking questions that made Eli's head spin. Then he went quiet. "I covered Thorn once," Damon finally said. "Back in '91, he was bulletproof. Teflon, like your friend said. There were whispers, of course. Girls who vanished. Campaign aides who never made it past one term. But no one had proof. Not like this." Eli squinted. "So what now? You write the story?" Damon shook his head. "Not yet. I need to verify the footage. Timeline, identities, authenticity, and most importantly, the yacht. We need to show that this was the Allegra. Without that link, it's just a video of rich people behaving badly." Miguel, who had been hovering near the open door, spoke up. "Then we go back down." The plan was set. The next morning, they would return to the wreck site with Damon in tow, document everything. The structure, layout, markings, anything that could tie it definitively to Thorne's missing yacht. But that night, someone cut the ropes on the Molly Jane. Eli found her drifting 3 docks down, her hull softly bumping against a concrete piling. No permanent damage, but the message was clear. "We see you." The return dive began under gray skies and a rising wind. The forecast warned of rough seas by late afternoon, but time was against them. Eli captained the boat while Carly and Miguel prepared their dive gear. Damon set up a waterproof camera rig, nervous but committed. As they approached the coordinates, Carly noticed something strange on the sonar. "Eli, did you move the anchor point?" "No. Why?" "The wreck's gone." Everyone stared at the screen. The massive shape they'd seen just days earlier had vanished. Not drifted, not broken apart. Vanished. Miguel double-checked the GPS. "We're right on it. This is the same spot." Damon's voice was thin. "You're saying an entire yacht just disappeared?" They dove anyway, circling the seafloor, scanning every direction. Visibility was poor. Storm runoff had clouded the water, but the reef bore no signs of recent disturbance. No debris trail, no fragments, just coral, sand, and silence. Back on the boat, Eli clenched his jaw. Someone moved it. Carly was pale. "But how? That thing was huge. You'd need a crane barge, permits, a full team." Damon rubbed his temples. "Or a black-budget operation with no paperwork." With the primary wreck site scrubbed, their only remaining asset was the tape. And that, they learned soon after, was already being challenged. 3 days after Damon flew back to Miami, a statement was issued by the Thorne estate. It denied all allegations, called the footage deepfake garbage, and claimed the real Allegra had been sold to a private collector in the Cayman Islands in 1987. They even produced shipping documents, clean, notarized, and suspiciously convenient. Damon wasn't surprised. This is how it always goes. Deniability, misdirection, plausible lies. But the more noise they make, the more afraid they are. He doubled down on his research. Through old yacht club registries and insurance filings, he found records indicating the Allegra had been declared missing after Hurricane Floyd in 1988. The Coast Guard report from that year mentioned a lost vessel presumed sunk, but no coordinates were recorded. Oddly enough, the officer who filed the report, a Lieutenant Harold Bricks, had retired 2 weeks later and relocated to Panama. Meanwhile, Eli kept the original tape in a waterproof container locked beneath his floorboards. And yet, more strange occurrences piled up. His mailbox was smashed. A drone hovered over his property for 6 straight nights. A man in a white polo shirt posed as a fisheries inspector before quietly retreating when Carly asked to see his credentials. It was clear now, someone was trying to erase the past, but they hadn't counted on the second tape. Carly had discovered it while cataloging the artifacts they'd recovered from the dive. Hidden inside the yacht's rusted ice bucket, wrapped in cellophane and tucked between crumbling Polaroids, was another VHS tape, unmarked, slightly damaged, but playable. They watched it the next morning, just the 3 of them, huddled in the boathouse like children around a campfire. This time, the video began with a different scene. A storm, violent waves, people shouting over wind. The camera was pointed at the ceiling of the yacht's main cabin, but you could hear everything. Someone screaming for help, someone else saying, "Turn it off, turn it off." Then the image shifted. A group of men were gathered in the lounge, visibly intoxicated. The same woman from the previous tape was there, now seated, quiet, hands trembling in her lap. One of the men held a knife, jokingly, carving into a mahogany table. Then the tape cut again. Darkness. And then, a frame-by-frame stutter of someone carrying what looked like a body. The woman, wrapped in a sheet. And then, nothing. The screen went blue. They sat in silence. Miguel was the first to stand. "That's not just evidence. That's a crime scene." Eli's voice was low. "And maybe a body, still down there, somewhere." Damon was called again. This time his tone was different, tighter, more urgent. "You need to secure that second tape. Hide it. And don't tell anyone outside this circle. I've got people looking into flight logs, financial records, security clearances. But if what you're saying is true, we may be looking at something even bigger. Bigger than Thorne. Bigger than politics. A cover-up spanning decades. But with the wreck moved, proof disappearing, and their circle shrinking, Eli and the others were rapidly becoming isolated. They made a decision. They would go public, but not through traditional channels. Damon proposed a secure data drop to international outlets, journalists with no ties to U.S. interests. He began digitizing the tapes, encrypting them, sending fragments to reporters in Norway, Australia, and Canada. But every step forward came with new shadows. Damon's apartment in Miami was broken into, nothing stolen except his external hard drive. Lindsay Holloway went quiet, missing a scheduled call with Carly, and later claimed she just needed space. Her voice was distant, controlled. Miguel found his tires slashed in the marina parking lot, and Eli received a letter. No envelope, no stamp, just a folded piece of paper slipped under his door. It read, "Bury it, Branson, or we'll bury you." By then, paranoia had crept in like mold. The once sturdy foundation of Eli's world, boats, ropes, tides, had been replaced by doubt, surveillance, and whispered threats. But still, he refused to give in. They redoubled their efforts to find the yacht. Miguel reached out to old salvage contacts, and after a few dead ends, got a hit. A friend of his, working on a coral restoration project near Dry Tortugas, had seen something unusual. A massive hull, sunken recently, with clear signs of being dragged. It matched the size and profile of the Allegra. Eli didn't wait. Within hours, they were en route, this time aboard a different vessel, one borrowed from a trusted friend who owed Eli favors going back 20 years. The Sea Pearl wasn't as fast, but it was quiet, unmarked, and equipped for deep dives. They arrived near dusk. The wreck was there, partially buried in sand, missing its upper deck, but unmistakably the same structure. Miguel dove first, then Carly. Eli stayed topside, gripping the radio, heart pounding. 30 minutes later, Miguel's voice crackled through the headset. "Eli, we found something." The wreck's cargo hold, previously inaccessible due to debris, had shifted during the move. Inside, they discovered plastic bins sealed with duct tape and lined in lead foil. One had cracked open. Inside were dozens of VHS tapes, each labeled by date, ranging from 1986 to 1988. They surfaced with 3, and just like that, the story changed again. Back on dry land, under the flickering lights of the old boathouse, Eli, Carly, and Miguel gathered around the portable VHS player like conspirators. The storm outside had picked up, rain tapping a frantic rhythm on the metal roof, but none of them even glanced at the window. The only thing that existed in that moment was the glow of the screen, and what it might reveal. The first of the new tapes began with ambient footage. The familiar interior of the yacht, dim lighting, laughter in the background, someone adjusting the camera focus. But then, unmistakably, William Thorne walked into frame, laughing, arm around a girl who couldn't have been older than 20. Her eyes were vacant, her smile forced. The date on the label was July 14th, 1987. The sequence played out like a loop from the past. Champagne, dancing, jokes that soured the longer they went on. But then, 10 minutes in, the tone shifted again. The camera followed Thorne and several men below deck into a sealed cabin. The door closed, but the audio kept running. Muffled voices, then a shout, then a loud, echoing thump, like someone falling hard. A woman screamed, and then, just as suddenly, the tape ended. The second reel was worse. This time, the camera wasn't stationary. It was held, nervously, shakily, by someone moving through the yacht as if trying not to be seen. The video was fragmented, out of focus, but it captured something unmistakable. Two men dragging an unconscious figure wrapped in sheets toward the rear deck. The timestamp showed the early morning hours, around 3:17 a.m. Eli paused the tape. His voice was low, hoarse. "That girl. That's the same one from the first tape. I'd bet my life on it." Carly didn't speak, but her hands trembled as she rewound the scene and played it again in slow motion. The girl's wrist fell from the bundle for just a moment, limp, lifeless, before it was tucked back under the sheet. Miguel turned away. "We need to stop watching these and get them into secure hands." But the third tape didn't just implicate individuals. It broke the illusion of isolation. It revealed that this was never just about a rogue millionaire on a luxury yacht. The footage, dated October 1st, 1988, showed a high-end party, hundreds of guests, elaborate decor, string quartets, waiters in white gloves. At first glance, it looked like an upscale gala, but the yacht was there again, visible in the background through large windows, parked offshore, lit up like a floating palace. And among the crowd were familiar faces, senators, judges, celebrities, names that had since become institutions. One, in particular, stood out, a man who, at the time, had been serving as Undersecretary of Defense. Carly leaned in. "He's still in office," Miguel muttered. "He's not just in office. He's on the short list for the next presidential run." The implications hit like a wave. This wasn't just about what happened on the Allegra. It was about a system of protection, a circle of power, wealth, and fear that stretched far beyond the Florida coastline. Eli stood, paced the boathouse. "If we go public now, they'll shut it down before it leaves our hands." Carly nodded. "We need leverage, eyes, proof that's already out there before they can silence us." They moved quickly. Within 48 hours, Damon had built a digital vault, uploading encrypted versions of all 3 tapes and linking them to secure third-party servers. If anything happened to him, or to the team, a pre-written expose, complete with footage, dates, and names, would be released globally. Insurance. But as expected, the noose tightened. Miguel was followed home from the gas station by an unmarked black sedan. Carly's university revoked her internship offer, citing reputational concerns. Eli received a certified letter from the state attorney's office informing him that he was under investigation for unauthorized salvage of protected maritime property. It was all pressure, psychological warfare, designed to scare them into silence, but it didn't work. Instead, they did the one thing no one expected. They went public, on their terms. With Damon's help, they uploaded a heavily redacted preview of the tapes to a private YouTube channel. Faces were blurred, names withheld, but the context was clear. The assault, the power players, the missing wreck. The video was titled simply, "Evidence the Ocean Wasn't Supposed to Give Back." It exploded overnight. Within 72 hours, it had racked up over 2 million views. Reddit threads lit up with frame-by-frame analyses. Armchair investigators cross-referenced faces, locations, and timestamps. Whistleblowers came out of the woodwork. Former yacht staff, disgruntled interns, even a former Coast Guard officer who admitted that high-level pressure led to the original report on the Allegra being scrubbed. Mainstream media hesitated at first, waiting to see if it would blow over. It didn't. By the end of the week, 3 major networks had picked up the story. The Thorne estate issued another statement, this one more aggressive, threatening legal action for defamation, slander, and the exploitation of digitally fabricated content. But something had shifted. The tide was no longer in their favor. Then, a break. A journalist from Sweden contacted Damon, claiming he had obtained yet another tape, mailed anonymously to his office. It featured footage from a private airport, time-stamped 1988, showing William Thorne boarding a private jet with several men and women, including the same girl presumed dead in the second tape. But here's the twist. She was alive, looking directly at the camera, smiling, or pretending to. Her presence raised more questions than it answered. Was she complicit, threatened, alive all this time? And most disturbingly, where is she now? Eli sat with that thought for a long time. At night, he played that tape over and over, watching her face, her eyes, searching for something, a signal, a clue, a plea. But the tape ended like all the others, with silence. The public wanted answers, and so did Eli. That's when Carly made a bold suggestion. We find her. Miguel frowned. You think she's still alive after all this? Carly nodded slowly. If she survived that night, she's either hidden or being hidden. And if we can find her, we can break the whole thing open. Damon was cautious. You're not talking about finding a person. You're talking about unlocking the core of a 40-year cover-up. If she talks, if she confirms what happened, it will bring down entire institutions. Eli met his gaze. Then we better start looking. The story wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. And here's where we turn it over to you, the viewers. What do you think happened to the girl in the tapes? Do you believe she survived? Or was she forced to play a role in a conspiracy so large it swallowed her identity? Was she a witness? A victim? Or something in between? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And if you believe stories like this need to be told, like this video, share it and subscribe, because the deeper we go, the more truths we'll uncover. This isn't the end. It's just another beginning. 2 weeks after the public release of the tapes, everything changed. News outlets that had once hesitated were now broadcasting updates daily. Analysts debated the implications on primetime television. Political commentators scrambled to minimize the fallout. But the real shift came when a new player entered the game, the FBI. Officially, the Bureau announced the formation of a task force to investigate potential criminal activity related to long-lost maritime evidence. Unofficially, sources confirmed that internal chaos had erupted. Files were being reopened. Names long thought untouchable were back under scrutiny. But for Eli, Carly, and Miguel, none of it mattered unless they could find her. The girl from the tapes. Carly's deep dive into public records had come up dry. No missing persons report, no obituary, no tax records. But a break came from an unlikely place, a handwritten letter. It arrived at Damon's office. No return address, just a Florida postmark. Inside was a torn photograph and a note. The photo showed a woman sitting at a cafe, sunglasses on, face partially obscured by a sun hat. A timestamp was faintly visible, April 2023. The note simply read, "She's alive, but she doesn't want to be found." Carly studied the photo for hours. There was something about the tilt of her head, the posture, the guarded hands on the cup. It was her. They were sure. A metadata search through online uploads confirmed the cafe's location. A quiet corner of St. Augustine, Florida. They didn't rush. They planned, quietly, discreetly. Eli and Carly made the trip alone. Miguel stayed behind to monitor the digital fallout and coordinate with Damon. No camera crew, no press. Just a quiet observation from across the street. They waited, and on the third day, she appeared. Older now. Her hair was darker, her frame smaller, but her eyes, even behind the sunglasses, were unmistakable. Carly whispered, "It's her." Eli nodded, "But she doesn't want to be found." They didn't approach her, they didn't call out. Instead, they wrote a letter. No pressure, no demands, just a simple offer. "If you ever want to speak your truth, we'll help you do it safely. Until then, we wish you peace." They left the note with the cafe owner, and they left. Back home, Carly uploaded one final video to the channel. This time, it wasn't about shock or spectacle. It was about closure and truth. She explained what they'd found, what they hadn't, and what they had chosen not to do. "She survived," she said, voice steady. "And maybe that's all we need to know for now. She deserves that choice. After everything she's been through." The response was overwhelming. Thousands of comments poured in, some begging her to speak, others applauding the team's respect for her silence. People from all over the world, survivors, advocates, whistleblowers, shared their stories. The comment section became more than a thread. It became a community. And in that, Eli saw something unexpected: hope. The tapes had unearthed something monstrous, a network of power, manipulation, and decades-long secrecy. But they had also done something else. They had broken the silence. In the months that followed, formal investigations launched into several public figures. One senator resigned. Another was arrested on unrelated charges, but the scrutiny had reopened old files. Several staffers came forward, protected by whistleblower laws. And the Thorne estate, under review for tax fraud, civil suits pending. But the Allegra remained at the bottom of the ocean, a silent witness, its secrets only partially told. Eli returned to his fishing roots, though things weren't quite the same. People waved more now. Strangers sent letters. Some called him a hero. He didn't feel like one. He just felt tired, but content. Carly went back to school, switching her focus to forensic anthropology. Miguel opened a dive school, and at the entrance, framed above the door, was a copy of the first blurry sonar image that had started it all. The video, the story you've just heard, ends here, but the questions remain. What happened on the Allegra all those years ago? How many others were involved? And how many stories like this lie hidden beneath the surface, waiting for someone, anyone, to pull them up and press play? Maybe the real mystery isn't what happened. Maybe it's why it was allowed to happen for so long. And the most haunting question of all, if she hadn't survived, would anyone have believed it ever happened? Thank you for watching. If stories like this matter to you, if truth matters to you, then help us keep telling them. Like this video. Comment with your thoughts, your theories, your questions. We want to hear them. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story we bring to light. And turn on notifications, because the next time the ocean gives something back, you'll want to be the first to know. Until then, stay curious and stay watching.